Welcome to ZenMadman's day 30 of nutty Pot Limit Omaha journeying. Here we have a limper in the hijack. We have observed a few hands, and they have played them interestingly. All right, Ace Jack 10 with a Jack High suit. I'm going to defend this against this micro raise. Not really too much to talk about there with that. I flop top pair, backdoor, flush draw. I'm going to just let it pass. We're going to check. And now I have a double gutter to go with my top pair. Decent kicker. And I'm blocking the nut flush draw. I'm going to go ahead and bet half pot here. It's somewhat for value, somewhat as a semi-bluff, somewhat to basically just deny equity. If my ace is good and somebody has like a one pair hand, I'm happy for them to fold. And now I think I can just check. And this person actually called really light in a hand a moment ago. I didn't even see what they had, but I know they did not have anything fantabulous because it was a double paired board and they lost to a flush. So at best they could have had a weaker flush. I have ace jack, and I think that's not going to get the job done. What are they betting? I don't know, maybe two pair, maybe some slow played something. They could have had like the under wrap, the wheel draw, and made a wheel. I don't think that's a spot where I'm going to hero a pot-sized bet. If they keep doing that with weak hands, if that indeed was a weak hand, they're going to run into some trouble. That's one of the reasons that we want to always have, some balance in our range, where sometimes we're checking some good hands, even when we don't know that it's an opponent that we need to do that against. But sometimes somebody's exploiting us not intentionally, right? If we have an unbalanced strategy, then we can get exploited either deliberately or kind of unintentionally exploited. Unintentional exploitation, I think, is a large societal topic that we will not get into during a poker stream. But I might argue it's much more common than deliberate. So it happens in poker too, where somebody just happens to have a strategy that just works really good against someone else's strategy. And, they didn't design it that way. They're not trying to exploit the other person. They're just playing how they play. And, sort of happened yesterday. I had two pair and I tried to turn it into a bluff, and it didn't go well in terms of a bluff, but I guess I unintentionally value bet really thin against my opponent's one pair that they called down with. That was hilarious. I was very, very amused by that hand. All right, so I've got a pair, I've got an ace and a jack, 4 cards, Broadway and bigger. So a lot of rainbow hands we cannot call with. I think this is one that we can, just because it's all big cards, right? I can flop a set, I can flop nut straights. There's a lot of really good flops. That's not really one of them. That's an okay-ish flop in some regards. I might be folding too much equity here, but I think I'm gonna fold. Ace, ace, king, king is a lot of their range. Ace, king is a lot of their range. A lot of the way I'm looking at a gutter and maybe 10-10, so that's not going to cut it. Getting 2-1 gutter is not sufficient. Even if the 10s are good outs, that would be like 6 outs. And with the 2-1 SPR, there's going to be a lot of boards I can get it in on. I don't think that's one of them. I'm going to mark that hand, review, and pre-flop. All right, so I only have the queen high suit. I'm trying to remember whether I'm supposed to 3-bet more with the queen high suit or more with the ace high suit. I'm not sure. This is a reasonable 3-betting candidate. This player so far hasn't been too aggressive, and I'm kind of happy playing pots with the small blind behind me. I don't mind taking a multi-way flop with this. I do think with the suited queen, I might be more apt to 3-bet because I have a little less playability than when I have the suited ace. And if I get 4-bet, folding is a little less tragic than folding when I have the suited ace. But I'm getting kind of what I wanted here. 4-way raised pot. I've top and bottom pair. Ace, ace, king, king are going to be very real parts of the raiser's range. The flatters could have king, king as well. Ace, king, of course, is also a possibility. Ace, 9 is you know, top and bottom pair. And if a jack or a 10 comes, I'll be double blocking the straight. It checks to me. I don't feel like they're going to be check raising a lot here. I have no hearts, which I don't love, but I think I'm going to go ahead and put in a half pot value bet and sort of equity denial. I think small hearts might fold from some players here. I don't think I get check raised too often. If I do, I'd say it clarifies the situation, which isn't to say that we should be betting to like find out where we're at, but I think we would happen to find out where we were at if we got check raised there. All right, so now ace king is a concern. That's really the only concern. The other concern is if they have a flush draw or a straight draw, how do we get value from it? King king is no longer a concern. I'm actually going to check back and try and let them make something. Buffy Bot says, "Good morning. Day what?" I don't know what day what means. Day is that I feel like that's some sort of British slang. So now we have a full pot bet. I think ace king's very possible. King king is also possible. 9-9, sure. Ace 4 and all sorts of bluffs. I didn't check this back so I could fold to a river bet. I checked it back so that I could win a pot size bet against a pair of 9s. So that went swimmingly, I would say. That just, you know, hands like that make me feel like an expert. I'm not an expert, right? I'm learning. But I like my thought process there, and I like the results of the thought process. So their bluff there is very validating of like what I was trying to accomplish, right? It shows that what I was trying to accomplish can be accomplished. Does that mean it was the best play? No, not necessarily. But it means that it was not totally without merit. So, you know, even with ace king, I might have checked back there because I'd just be crushing the board so hard. Yeah, so I thought that was a fun hand, and we'll put it in the session review and talk about it a little more. As always, anytime there's a hand that you feel I don't reach a sufficient level of depth, or there's a specific question that you have regarding it, or you have an idea on how you think it should be played other than however I'm discussing, please put that in the chat on Twitch, put it in the comments on YouTube, and just let me know what the whole cards were. And if it's during the Twitch stream, then I will review it at the end of the session. And if it's as a YouTube comment, I'll respond to the comment, and we'll get a little conversation going, a little back and forth exchange of ideas. All right, these players are getting a little back and forth exchange of chips, perhaps. Limp. You know, queen 6-7, there's a lot of things limpers can have. That 6-7 feels very limpy, you know, a lot of queen X type stuff too. Lots of straight draws but like, it's, I don't know, like they probably don't have a bunch of rundowns, right? They probably have a bunch of kind of, you know, janky, like, what is the etymology of janky? Does that come from some questionable source? I always wonder now, like with every word, like where does that come from? Because there's obviously certain words that are common parlance that have really horrible etymologies, but I don't know about janky. So, but yeah, like, you know, queen 7-5-3 is sort of hand that like people, you know, single suited people who play 71% of their hands, they're playing that sometimes. Now they're going to be up to 75%. So, yeah. All right, feeling good this session. You know, it's nice. It's nice making a boat and then having someone turn their hand into a big pot-sized bluff on the river with a hand that they just surely, I think, would have folded the turn. Okay, we're gonna check this back. I have a flush draw and a backdoor straight draw and a pair of deuces. None of those things are particularly exciting to me, and I'm going to fold them. 10 high flush draw with a queen, king, and an ace potentially out there. Not super great. Also, I'm blocking myself with the extra deuce. Really, I'd say the 9 is the extra card because we'd rather have 10 deuce suited than 10-9 suited, except for the fact that 10 deuce suited means we have a 10 and a deuce in our hand, which is not generally favorable. So what is going on here? So the turn changed the the nuttiness, the what was the nuts, and so did the river. Wow, three queens took it down. Interesting. That's I think that's a hand that you can raise on the button, right? Three queens with a suited ace. That seems actually king 665 with a suited king. I would have raised if it folded to me in the small blind. I think that's pretty decent. You know, the 6-5 has good playability. King high flush has good playability. Pair of sixes against a big blind can make some stuff. Not on a board like this. Well, runner. But yeah. Gonna do a lot of folding. So let's take a look at the table. We have the two players on our left have both open limped, right? And they're both playing more than half of their hands, which is a good sign. The player across from us is playing close to half of their hands and playing them rather passively. The player on our right has been kind of tight and aggressive. We're going to 3-bet them because we have aces and queens and a suit. And then the other player's kind of, sort of tight passive. I don't know. I guess the player on our right has been more tight passive. I'm trying to think. Oh, yes. Oh, so BuffyBot says, you said day 30. Isn't this day 33 of your nutty journey? Indeed. Indeed it is. It is day 30. Did I say day... It's not day 30. It's day 33. All right. How often are they check raising here? What's the SPR? The SPR is 4-1. Do I have anything to go with this? Basically, I have 4 outs to the nuts and a weak backdoor. I'm going to check this one back. Hit a king. King's a rather poor card, as King is going to raise call here a lot. My queen is no longer a nutty out. My ace is no longer a nutty out. I still have, well, now I have 3 outs to the nuts, where a 10 that's not a heart would give me the nut straight. Aces can be good here. I'm blocking the hearts, which could give me some playability on the river, but on the other hand, that takes a lot of bluffs out of their range. I have ace, ace, queen, queen, which takes a lot of straight draws out of their range. I'm going to just knit it up and fold this one and mark it for post-flop review. I don't really have good ways of reviewing a hand like that at the moment, unfortunately. That's kind of solver land to figure out, where's the equilibrium. But I can sit there and talk about it and think through it a little bit more. Yeah, so day 33 of my Nutty Pot Limit Omaha journey, which I might rename in YouTube land, we'll see. Except in every video I'm saying that, but I'm kind of saying it, semi-coherently only at best. So now this player on our left it seems like these people have been playing a lot of hands, then all of a sudden they're not playing as many hands. Player on our right changed, so we have to keep an eye open for that. Not the same person. The Ethical Panda says, Wiki Dictionary says janky is a derivation of junkie. So so I think it's safe. Oh, we've got a lot of etymology here. Okay, we'll come back to that. Actually, you know what? Let's get it. Let me read it and make sure. Yeah, okay. From dictionary.com, janky first emerged in black slang in the 1990s, featured in rap songs as early as Ice Cube's 1993 Really Dough. Hard to swallow, janky is Rolo, count to 10 and don't try to follow. Rolo may be a reference to Rollo Lawson, a recurring character on the 1970s sitcom Sanford and Son, who had a seedy reputation on the show. The Roots and Coolio also prominently featured janky in lyrics in 1993 to 1994. It is unclear where the term originates, but hip-hop and black culture's MMO. I don't know what MO means. I think there's a lot more, but it got cut off. But yeah, that gives us an idea. Okay. Probably not from Rollo Tomasi, a LA Confidential reference, but yeah, I'd say the Sanford and Son reference is more likely, especially given the timing. All right, enough about etymology. I greatly enjoy etymology. I don't know. I like I like the story of where things come from, and I like language and words, even when I have a hard time speaking them because it is like it's almost like I intentionally couldn't say because I was trying to make a point, but I wasn't. I don't know, because it is early in the morning. We had all these like speaking exercises in yoga teacher training where you'd say certain things and it gets, I guess they do that in acting and stuff like that as well. Vocal warm-ups, but not like vocal cords, but the you know speaking muscles. Ace King Jack 5 with a suited ace, nice hand. Flop top pair, top kicker, nut shot, backdoor nut flush draw. This feels like good enough to bet. One reason that I would rather bet this compared to if I had a hand like ace ace, right? The nice thing about ace king is I'm blocking king king, I'm blocking king 10, I'm blocking king 7. So I'm not 100% certain whether or not it's correct, but I do think that having a board pair may allow us to bet a little bit more frequently than having a similarly valued overpair, right? Like ace ace and ace king are going to be similarly valued in that ace king isn't going to lose to anything that ace ace is going to beat. It's going to chop with ace king, and sure, it would technically lose to ace ace, but our opponent shouldn't really have ace ace there. So I would say they are similarly valued, and as such, having the other thing is when we have top pair, then we have a bunch of outs to two pair. Whereas when we have an overpair, technically the board can pair and we have two pair, but it's not quite the same. So, yeah, that's one reason I like to bet in that spot. And if we had gotten check raised, I don't know. If it was less than pot sized, I might have called it. I did have the gut shot. I had top pair, top kicker. I had backdoor nut flush draw. There were a decent number of turns to continue on with confidence. That's really what it comes down to. Like how many future cards are we going to be able to continue with confidence? That's what I'll call my Pot Limit Omaha book. Continue with confidence. All right, Jack 7-6 feels like right on the cusp. Jack 7-8 I would definitely play. I'm gonna fold this one. So what's gonna happen here is if I raise, I'm gonna get one or two cold calls behind me, or not. Apparently these people, nobody had anything. I'll mark that hand and double check that, but I think that is just below the cutoff. I think I need 8-7 to open that hand there. Maybe even better, but I think 8-7. Double suited, of course. I would play Jack 7-6 in the hijack. But in that position, I'm fine letting it go. And this is something I feel has helped my game immensely in a bunch of ways. Just kind of letting go of the hands that feel like they're borderline, but just on the underside of borderline. Just letting them go and not stretching to find reasons to play a hand. Those hands, maybe some of those hands are going to be profitable for an expert player. Some of them are not going to be profitable for an expert player. There's something to be said for finding yourself in some number of uncomfortable situations and then navigating those and learning from them. However, the earlier you are in your journey with anything really, the larger percentage of everything is going to be a little difficult to navigate, right? Like some spots that should be very straightforward are still going to be difficult for me to navigate because I don't have the huge level of experience, the pile of heuristics, the finely developed intuition for how all these spots work. So I'm already going to find myself in plenty of those types of situations, as I'm sure you've seen in this very stream. But if we kind of avoid the worst of those, like not by making just really terrible folds or playing like 5% of our hands, that's not what I'm talking about. But I'm saying going from 26% to 22%, or even 30% to, all right, let's play this hand, to like 26%. Just cutting off those worst hands. Like this feels close. The 10 does connect with the 6, barely. I have 3 Broadway cards. This might not make a bad 3-betting hand. I have to observe that the razor, it has been very tight so far. I do think with the ace high suit I can call this. it feels like the sort of hand that is folding this might be a little too tight, right? But if you make the 10 a 9, if you give me not the ace high suit, you know, if we're going to err in terms of playing hands that we shouldn't be playing, we want to make sure that the ones that we're playing that are maybe a little too loose at least still have good nut making potential, which that hand did. That hand was going to have a lot of flops that were going to be very strong. And so that's why, you know, that's going to be why I'm gonna play that there. But yeah, I just think cutting off those hands that put us in these extra uncomfortable situations, like, yeah, we want to be uncomfortable some, but if we're uncomfortable so often, then I think it's just extra stressful. It uses a lot of mental energy, a lot of emotional energy, and the more that we kind of refine the pre-flop game and don't play the hands that are just a little bit outside of, not outside of our comfort zone, but outside of, you know, the range of hands that we can profitably play. If as we get rid of those hands, I think the game just gets easier, right? We don't have as many difficult spots, so when we do have difficult spots, there's more energy to spend on them and to really be like, okay, now I really have to think about this. Whereas if every other hand you're doing that, it's hard. That's one reason that heads up poker is such a challenge, right? There's a mental stamina aspect to the game. The 6 and the deuce are not going to make this playable. It's nice to have a suit, and that suit is to my highest card. Of course, my highest card is a 9. Make the deuce like a 5 or higher, and I would play this. BuffyBot says, this Rolo rhymes with follow. So is it Rollo? Maybe. I don't know. So not Rolo Tomasi. Fair. Fair. All right. 7-4-4 Trey. Again, just not good enough. Make the 7 a 5. Make the 3 a 6. I still think maybe it's a little too light. Maybe got to go double suited with that one. Not really sure. But I'm not going to mark that one. This hand looks just like a clear fold to me. All right, so did we get a limp re-raise from the small blind? I think the small blind limped in and the big blind raised, and the small blind said, more. And that does not look like the ideal pre-flop 3-betters flop. You know, they're going to have a lot of overpairs, though, and the SPR is fairly low, but it's not that low. So, yeah, this person's going to have, like, 2-pair combos, sets, flush draws with wraps, maybe a pair and a wrap. I don't see how they could get away from it. Top set's pretty good, and now they make a flush. And they didn't make a straight to go with the set and the flush, but they had the 2 best hands. So, and this I think I will fold. Yeah, so that seems like if we pop that up just for a moment, you know, 10-8-5 with a suit. The person who limp re-raised had ace queen deuce, so they just had none of the board. And a raise caller can have a fair amount of that board. So I think betting those aces there, probably a mistake. With SPR 1 or something like that, sure, just rip it in. Rip it and flip it. But in that spot, actually, let's see, what's the equity on the flop? 93%. Yeah. So that's obviously like one of the worst case scenarios. But 9s with a suit. The 8-7 makes me want to play this. The extra card to the suit, it's going to be really hard to make a straight flush. Bummer. But, you know, I'm okay with that. I think the combination of connectivity, pair, and potential flushiness, which now we are the only, you know, suit that doesn't have a backdoor flush draw, is ours. Oh, really? Really? You flatted and then you raised an ace-high board. I did not think I would get potted that often here. So I have all the ace-ace in my range. They theoretically don't have any, but they do. We've seen them limp ace-ace just a couple hands ago. I have an open-ended straight draw. I'm blocking a lot of the straight draws. I have middle pair. I'm probably just going to fold to this. So I'm just kind of talking it through. I'm getting 2-1. But, like, what are you doing? So I don't know, whatever. I'm gonna mark this hand and take a look at it um, later and see what they actually had. So here I will explain after the session why I bet that flop and why I was so happy to bet that flop. It was a very good flop for my range, so we'll talk about that. But that that doesn't mean that they can't find some raises. My guess is that the solver would be like, in position does not raise this flop. Now, theoretically, they should have some cold calls with some ace-ace, but not a lot, and so little that I think they really probably... these kings are not strong enough to really want to raise. I'm going to have a lot of bad flops. This is a pretty decent flop. I have the second nut flush draw, an overpair, and I'm blocking straight draws, and I'm blocking this bottom card. A tight-ish player leads out, which is fairly concerning to me. I have 3 outs to the... No, yeah, 3 outs to the nuts. That's not a lot. I am going to call because I think the players behind me are going to call fairly poorly, basically. And, I mean, we did see a strange raise from this put in position player on the last hand, and now I have an open-ended straight draw. That's not very nutty, unfortunately. If it were a draw to the nuts, I'd be much happier with it. I think there's a chance my kings are good. My flush draw feels a lot weaker than it did before there were 4 players. And the straight draw is kind of an emergency straight draw. So we're going to check. We're going to see what happens on the next... This is one of those spots where I have so many things that could potentially win, but I'm out of position, and this player bet into 4 players, well, into 3 opponents in a 4-way pot. They bet 3/4 pot, I believe, roughly, and like my kings can be good. I'm not going to have a lot of rivers that I can play confidently, though, and this is just, it's kind of a gross fold. I don't know. We'll also see. Like, it's hard for me to have really bad equity there, but it's going to be very difficult to play. Actually, it's easy for me to have very bad equity. They can just have, like, ace-4 of spades, and I'm just destroyed, right? But being out of position, in position, I might call that bet. Here with the deuce and the 6, I'm going to fold this. The Ethical Panda says heads-up poker is also very hard to stream about because you never get the downtime while a hand plays out to talk about it or catch your breath. Maybe, I don't know. I actually think that's, in a way, that's an advantage to heads up, is that there's just always something to talk about, right? You're in every hand, so there's maybe going to be a little less interaction, but I think in terms of creating engaging content, I think heads up is fantastic. For me, the downside in terms of streaming is that and I know the Ethical Panda has run into some heads up games, right, where but you're trying to talk about, Loki and other stuff, right? If you're just trying to talk about poker, I think it can be an advantage. But the problem is that streaming while playing heads up, if that player you're playing heads up is stream sniping, they might not be able to see what you have in the hand, but if they can get an insight into your thought process, that's going to be way more valuable than it would be to somebody just sitting at a random 6-max table with you, right? Because getting that insight into a thought process is so valuable in heads-up poker. So that's one of the things I'd say. But yeah, I can see, not having downtime. You'll get some things where it's like fold, especially in like no limit and maybe some in Pot Limit Omaha. In Limit Hold'em, there's just not that much pre-flop folding, so there's just fairly constant action. But yeah, I think I like having something to always talk about. But it's a different stream, right? It would be different. It's maybe better for making training videos. I think heads up content is like some of the most fun to watch in terms of someone just narrating their thought process. But I think I agree in terms of interactivity. It's going to be more difficult to have that. But honestly, like live poker isn't great for interactivity. Like I'm talking about what the ethical panda said 3 minutes ago, and then in 3 minutes they'll read or hear what I'm saying now, and then maybe respond, and then 3 minutes from now I'll read that. So uh, playing without a delay. I'm actually thinking about maybe at some point streaming poker without delay and just covering my hole cards and just have it be like we'll just hang out and talk. And it's like you're sitting at a poker table playing when we're playing together, and then after the hand, I'll be like, "Oh yeah, I had this" or whatever. Um, I think that could be interesting. I think that could be an interesting format. And I know Cheese Bunnies, who streams MTTs in poker, does has it set up so that the visual feed there's the tables and those are on delay, but then Cheese Bunnies is talking in real time with the chat. So, if you've got a solid, good amount of people chatting, I think that can be really effective. But again, that's more of, there's not a whole lot of discussion of the poker, right? It's not like, oh, I'm thinking about this and narrating the hands. So, it's a different vibe and a different focus, which, I think it's good that different people do different things, and I think any given person can do different things too. We get another limp re-raiser. This is something to keep an eye on. If a lot of people are doing this more often, we want to be aware of that when we're raising limps, right? We've seen both of these players limp re-raise against the same player. I wonder if they're just kind of getting sick of it by now. But let's see. Got 7 hands for review already. 4 of those have post-flop discussion. So I think that's kind of regret those kings. I'm going to mark those to talk about in terms of review as well. And just kind of let it go. 10-9-7-3 double suited. It's exactly, I think, the type of hand that feels like, oh, well, I'm double suited and everything connects. Yeah, I fold. There's 2 players I have to beat. So making a bunch of second best hands isn't like, here I flop bottom 2 and I guess a gut shot to the underside and 2 backdoor flush draws that aren't particularly good backdoor flush draws. Like, this would just be a check fold here. There's going to be some good flops for sure, but I'm going to have to beat 2 people, so I'm going to need very good flops, and I'm going to have to play them out of position, which is kind of what went wrong with the king's hand, right? I was out of position. If I was in position, a little different story. But also none of my draws there were to the nuts. Here, my flush draws are never going to be to the nuts. I guess I can make a nut flush with king, queen, jack on board and make a straight flush. But, all right, double suited jacks with a king. Having the king to go with the double suited jacks is nice. The 6 is garbage, but I guess it's the largest garbage. Do I 3-bet this? Do I fold it? Or do I flat it? I think with this big blind, I'm considering flatting. All the options are kind of on the table. If the king were an ace, I would definitely 3-bet it. And this opener is fairly tight. I'm going to flat, basically because of the big blind. And then the big blind's like, what? What are you doing? So I will check. This is an interesting board where I can probably develop a leading range. My flatting range, I think, is going to hit this pretty well. I'm going to have some rundowns that I want to flat with this player behind me. That's a very good turn card. Queen 9, 9-7 are still straights. I don't think they're going to have them that often. There's 2 flush draws on board, so I'm actually just going to pot it. I have one of those flush draws, but I think my opponent's just going to fold a lot here. And they're going to be in a difficult spot with any non-nut draws. Maybe nut diamonds continues. Aces with nut diamonds. Maybe they can have like a Broadway wrap, something like that. But they might fold a Broadway wrap with, without anything else. And I'm fine getting them to fold that equity, particularly when I'm going to have to play the rest of the hand out of position. Well, I play the whole hand out of position. 4s, double suited. It's nice to be double suited, but the 6 and the 9 are not so nice. So I think that's a pretty easy fold. Where are we on session length? We're coming up on 40 minutes pretty soon. I will sit out at the next blind because we have a good number of hands to discuss this session, I'd say. Oh, okay, so yeah, and so now 3 minutes later, I get to read what the ethical panda said in response to what I said 3 minutes ago. That was 3 minutes after they said the other thing they said. So true, but I more mean a lot of what you do is to keep thinking about a hand after you fold, which is harder when there's always another hand. Yeah. So I try, unsuccessfully a lot of the time, I try not to think too much about a previous hand moving on. But in terms of streaming, that's difficult, right? Because that's kind of like, oh, here's a point of interest. Let's talk about this point of interest. But as a player, what I want to do is I want to be like, oh, I'm in this hand. I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it. Okay, it's over. This is something I want to do more thinking about it. I'll mark it and I'll let it go. And now I want to be totally present in the next hand. Streaming kind of plays against that. So that's a little difficult because it's like, yeah, we just saw the one hand. Maybe you want to ask questions about it. Maybe I want to elaborate more. That's why I have the session review at the end so that we can get into those a little deeper then. But I hear you. It's like, yeah, that's kind of just a challenge of poker. But here it's like, yeah, I can talk about a previous hand because I've got nothing. I folded. And my original concept was like, I'm going to really focus on this, right? Okay, the button limped, the small blind raised, call. Anybody can have clubs here. I would think more ace-x type hands in the small blinds range. The big blind half pots it, which seems like a reasonable bet size on a monotone board. It's going to be a kind of, way ahead, way behind scenario. Sets, small blind could have checked some sets on the flop. That would have been very reasonable on the monotone board, especially if they don't have something like the ace of clubs. So they could be leading there with jack-jack, 8-8, but they can also be bluffing. And then now this hand, let's follow the action. So that's kind of what I originally mostly wanted to do with the stream. But on the other hand, it's like, oh, there's people here and I want to chat. So it's a little bit of a challenge between, good interactivity in terms of the stream and having a real high level of single tabling poker focus. And I don't know to what extent I've struck that balance. Probably not phenomenally well. I've mostly opted for leaning into the chatting a little bit more, which has felt comfortable and is actually quite enjoyable and I think makes for a better stream. It probably doesn't make for as good content on YouTube, but let's do the session review. Okay, session review time. King 4-3. This hand haunted me. So let's talk now about what to do here. So I can raise this. That would be okay. If these players were more like 100 VPIP, I think I would have raised. But we've seen both of them limp re-raise. So King against Ace, not fantastic. It's not to say that's a lot of their range. But they don't have just this broad range of tons of terrible hands. We want them at the table, but not a huge range, right? I mean, I'm playing with people playing 80% of their hands every day. And then the small blind, who knows what they have. A raise might shake them loose, but I decided to check. If I was double suited, I would raise, and if the 4-3 were more like Jack 10 with a suit, I would raise. But I think this is like, Alright, so we have full pot here, and this is the first decision point. I don't think raising makes a lot of sense, as there's really not going to be a lot of ways that I can play that confidently going forward. Queen is possible. 3-3 and deuce less likely. A hand like Queen 3, 2-pair doesn't seem super likely. So in terms of hands that are beating me right now, I think Queen is probably one of the most likely. I think they have some kind of a really big draw here a fair amount of the time, but they can have like a Queen 3, Queen deuce, maybe even deuce. Some of the time. Those are possible. I've got a lot of stuff going on, and I end up calling, and part of my explanation was I have these players behind me who I think are going to call with a lot of stuff they shouldn't. Is that actually an argument for calling here? I'm not certain. Like, I really don't know. But I feel like, yeah, I'm getting 2-1, but I might be getting an overlay by some hands that like really shouldn't be in there. And because there's a 2 and a 3 on the board, and these players aren't playing like 100% of their hands, kings are pretty good. They're going to be good a fair amount of the time. A king is going to give me the nuts. An ace of spades is going to give me the nuts. A 3 is going to give me a pretty good hand. And a spade is going to give me, you know, the second nuts. That's if it's not the ace of spades or the deuce of spades. So everybody calls, and I'm like, oh, well, maybe that's a bit much. I don't know. The 5 on the turn, they check, and I have an open-ended straight draw. I'm blocking both straights, so that's nice. There's 2 flush draws. I think if I bet here, I'm rarely going to just take it down right away. It's possible if I, like, potted it, but we have 3 players who wanted to put in a pot-sized bet on the flop. So I think checking is prudent. I do that, and then we get a pot. This is like, I think this is more than this is about 3/4, whatever. So they bet, and then there's a fold. And the question is, do I want to call this bet, or do I want to fold, or do I want to like jam somehow? If I don't think they have a made straight, I think jamming has maybe some merit if they can fold a hand like 2 pair. I don't feel like this is the sort of player where I want to try and put a move like that on. Having a single 4, if I had 2 4s, maybe a little bit better, although then I wouldn't have the straight draw unless one of the kings was like a 4. So I have an open-ended straight draw, not to the nuts. I have a set draw still, not to the nuts. I have 1 pair that's a good 1 pair, but it doesn't feel like 1 pair is that great right now. And I have a flush draw that's not to the nuts. So I have all these non-nutty hand, draws, and I'm out of position. So I end up folding. It feels like a lot of equity to fold, but like the river, I just think is going to be very, very treacherous. Maybe I should call here. Maybe if I'm going to call the flop, I should call a turn like this against 1 player. You know, the nice thing about 1 player is if they somehow have like ace 5 of spades with like a 6 and a 7 or something, and then the river goes check, check, like I can win with my kings. But I'm okay with this hand. It's one of those uncomfortable spots that maybe we can't avoid, right? I mean, maybe on the flop I could fold, maybe it could raise pre, maybe I could raise the flop. I don't think that's good. But yeah. So, and that's one of the reasons that since we're going to have some that we can't really avoid, we're going to have to go, we want to stay away from some of the ones that we can avoid. So this actually is just a clear fold. Single suited 9s. Oh, yeah, and the low jack. This is just a fold. So 9987 single suited, clear fold. Actually, not clear fold. It is fold in low jack. 9910 single suited is RFI call. Good suit. And now let's go and let's take a look at in MP. Do we play this hand? And the answer is still no. We still don't. Interesting. All right. So I guess we have to go all the way to the cutoff to where we actually want to play this single suited hand, right? Yeah. So 9987 single suited is RFI call and cutoff, and only good suit. So if we're suited to the 8, we actually fold it. Which is interesting that like the 8 and the 9 actually make that much difference. I would think that good suit, bad suit doesn't make as much difference in, the solver probably mixes both, and this one calls more than half and the other calls or raises less than half. Anyway, I get flatted, and then I thought this was actually pretty interesting. All right, reasons to bet here. Well, first of all, I have an open-ended straight draw. I have middle pair. I actually have second pair. I can beat middle pair. And I'm blocking the wraps. So there's not going to be a lot of hands that my opponent is going to want to continue with. Hard for them to have middle set, hard to have top 2, bottom 2. They can have top and bottom, they can have bottom set, and, they can have top pair and some stuff. Hard for them to have any really good straight draws, but possible. So I bet half pot, which on this ace high board, single raise pot, I think this is kind of just mostly the play. Is I'm going to be betting a lot on these boards. If it's not ace high, I'm going to be checking a lot. And then they go ahead and raise pot, which is weird because they should have very little ace-ace, right? I mean, they can flat garbage ace-ace to try to defend against getting squeezed. And this player doesn't raise a lot. They have 3-bet, though. We've seen them, you know, limp re-raise, I guess, their ace-ace, blind versus blind. So it's possible that they're flatting some there in the cutoff. But this is like a very eyebrow-raising play. If they don't have ace-ace, first of all, I think like 15% of my range is ace-ace. So if they have 8-8, I think they're just supposed to flat here. If they have 6-6, I think they just flat. Ace-8. Maybe ace-8's a better raise than 8-8 because at least it's blocking ace-ace. And then instead of 15%, it would probably be more like 8% of my range, something like that. But the ace-ace. So there's a very curious raise. It's like, what? But, you know, what am I going to do? Hard to fight against that out of position. If I had like a 10 to go with this, or if I had like ace 9 8 7, I'd be like, okay, let's go, right? I've got an open and a straight draw, top 2 pair, and like if you somehow have ace ace, I still have actually decent equity. But I fold, so that's that. And that's just a spot I could have folded pre, and I would have avoided that. So that's, you know, that's at that part of the range that I'm still playing that I can shave that off. I can shave it off and be doing a little bit better. Ace queen 10 6 with a suit. Okay, big blind, squeeze spot versus cutoff. And notice the cutoff has been very conservative in terms of raising range. So big blind, squeeze, cutoff. We'll take a look. Ace queen single suited. This might be a fold. That's weird. So ace queen 10 7 we call. Ace queen 10 5 we call. Ace queen 10 6 and ace queen jack 6 are both folds. So they're these weird outliers. And I was looking at the 6 going like, that's not a great card because it can't really make nut straights. And the 5 at least makes the wheel, which maybe 5-6 is a little less frequent. I don't know. But is weird fold. Big blind versus cutoff squeeze spot. Ace queen 10 7 good suit and ace queen 10 5 good suit are both calls. So this is definitely not a 3-bet. I want like ace queen jack 10 with the ace high suit to be 3-betting in this spot. But even then, against this player, I don't know if I would have put in the 3-bet. So this, again, this is a little too loose. Although it's this really weird outlier that I think this isn't the sort of hand that I'm going to really worry too much about playing that I shouldn't be playing. And I flop backdoor nut flush draw and you know, the pair. And they decide to bet. And there's just, it's hard to proceed here. I mean, I'm blocking some flush draws, I guess. But they can have a lot of overpairs. They can have rundowns that just smash this board. Have an 8 with 3 unpaired cards. I just fold. And I don't think that's particularly controversial. All right, Jack 7-6, and this one I folded, which I think is going to be correct. I think this is just a little too loose. It might be considerably too loose, so I'm double checking to see, like, I said with an 8 and a 7, I would probably raise this, but I think that might be incorrect. Let's take a look. Jack 8-7 is a fold, actually. Jack 9-8 is a fold. So Jack 7-6, single suited, clear, fold in hijack. As is Jack 8-7 single suited. Jack 9-8 single suited is RFI. As is Jack 10-7 single suited. Good suit. Yeah, so that kind of gives us a little bit more clarity here. This is a good fold. This is something that I've been improving on, I think. Obviously, we saw the 9s. I thought because they were connected that I'd be able to play them. But as they're 9s, it's we can't play them as much, right? Because they are smaller. They don't make top set as much, and when they do, there's more likely to be straights out there. All right, so pre-flop, like, what are we gonna say? Ace, ace, queen, queen, double suited or single suited even. You know, we 3-bet. I don't think this is the sort of ace ace combo we want to be flatting with, and we don't want to be flatting that often. So I flop no backdoor flush draw, 2 overpairs. So I'm going to have 4 outs to the Stone Cold Nuts. This board looks really nice with the last hand. Actually, I'd be blocking my own outs with the Jack 7-6. But I think Jack is going to be part of their range. I think they're going to have rundowns that are going to be very happy here, like 8, 9, 10 and a pair, right? Or a gutter and 2 pair. It's pretty easy for them to have 2 pair. They can have some of these sets, especially Jack. They can have some King. And if they have a hand like King, my plan is to check it back and then get maybe 1 or 2 value bets, maybe a value bet on the river, maybe bet the turn like as an inflection bet, depending on how the board develops, maybe some of their timing and their checking. So I check it back, and the turn's a king, which is, I think, a fairly horrible card. They bet 3/4 pot. Now, having the ace of hearts is kind of a double-edged sword, right? Where I can call and float, and if a heart comes off, I can now bluff the river. I'm not sure how convincing that will be, but I'll be able to basically, I'll have room for a pot-sized bet, right? Which will put them close to all in. So I think that'll be an uncomfortable spot for them. So I like that aspect of it. The downside is I know they're not semi-bluffing with nut hearts, right? They don't have nut hearts. So what else do I have? Well, I have ace, queen. Okay, what other draws can they have? Well, they can have ace, queen 10, 8, 9, 10, queen. Like, a lot of their strong draws have the ace of hearts or any ace and certainly any queen. So I'm really blocking their drawing range, which is going to shift them towards more made hands. And if I'm thinking about, like, what are my outs, I've got 3 10s to the nuts. I've got 2 queens, one of which brings hearts, both of which bring straights. I have 2 aces, neither of which bring hearts, both of which bring ace straight. And, like, if they have king jack, I have a 6 or a 7 or something like that. If they have 2 pair, I have some counterfeit outs. And then my set outs are good unless they have draw with it. So I just go ahead and fold. I feel like this, I'm not sure in terms of balance, but what I like in this hand is that I looked at my hand and said, what am I blocking? What do I want them to have? I'm like, I want them to have draws. What am I blocking? I'm blocking draws. Okay, I fold, right? And that doesn't mean it's necessarily correct, but it means that I'm thinking about something that in week 1, 4 weeks ago, I wasn't thinking about that every time I was considering calling, considering my opponent's range. It's just always important to be thinking about, what are we blocking? What are we blocking? What are we blocking? Is it the things we want them to have? Is it the things we don't want them to have? And so for that reason, I'm happy with that hand, regardless of whether it was the correct play or not. It was a good element to the thought process, and I want to make sure that I'm integrating that into my thought process every time, and kind of reinforcing when I get it right? Not necessarily when I get the result right in terms of the correct play, but that's an element of the thought process. Like, good, okay, we thought about that, excellent. All right, ace, queen 9 with a suited to the queen, and there's a hijack open raise. I'm pretty confident we're going to play this hand. The question is more 3-bet or flat. I opted to go for the flat, partially because these players behind me, I want them to come in. This hand, it doesn't have to be heads up to be happy. Although with the queen high flush draw, it maybe is a little happier heads up. But it's going to flop some big hands, and if I do flop something like a set of queens, I'm happy to have these cats in and try and win some money from them. So we'll look at this cutoff versus hijack. And queen, ace 9 is definitely a 3-bet, whether suited to the ace or suited to the queen. What is interesting is that I was correct that most of the ones suited to the queen, actually everything that's suited to the queen technically, is going to be a 3-bet, whereas a lot of the suited to the ace, we're going to flat. So this is something that I'm happy that that I got the concept right, even if the execution was off, although I don't think the execution was actually off, because I chose to make an exploitative play based on, the context, basically, right? I chose to do a different play based on the context, these players behind me. Queen, ace 9 single suited is 3-bet fold, cutoff versus hijack RFI. Good suit or bad suit. All queen, ace X, bad suit, except ace king, queen, is 3-bet RFI in this spot. A lot of ace, or sorry, queen, ace, X. Good suit is cold call. 9 through 5 are 3-bet. So we'll go queen, ace, 9 through 5. Good suit are 3-bet fold. Okay, so that kind of says that. So the ace makes it a good 3-betting candidate because the 9 isn't a really nice straight card. It makes it one that I should 3-bet, but with these players behind, it might be more advantageous to flat. I do flat, and let's see, let's check back there. Okay, and we get a multi-way pot, which is what I was going for, right? This is what I was aiming for. This is why I flatted, because I thought, okay, reasonable chance these players flat behind me, and I get a nice multi-way pot where I can try and flop a set of queens or top and bottom pair, which is, you know, pretty good too. And it goes check. So the biggest concern was the pre-flop raiser, right? Ace, king, squarely in their range. Ace, king as well. 9-9 possible, but I'm blocking that. I'm also blocking ace, king, and ace, but there's a ton of combos of ace, king out there. But they check, and I feel like, okay, there's some straight possibilities, and there's a very obvious flush draw out there. And actually, people might have fewer flush draws when the ace and the king are out there, but that notwithstanding, it's a wet board. And so I think on an ace-high wet board, the pre-flop raiser, should they flop a set of aces or kings or top 2 pair, is going to bet here a lot. So when they check, I think my hand is very often good. Sure, the player behind me could have me beat. Sure, the player in the small blind could have me beat, but I think it's worth a bet. I bet half pot. I'm going to get called here by some flush draws, maybe by some king 9, some straight draws, and that's fine. I don't need to just blow everyone out of the pot. And if a jack or a 10 comes, I'm going to be double blocking the straight, which I like. My hand is maybe a little too good to like make use of that as a bluff, but it means I'm less likely to lose to a straight. So now I turn a boat, but it's the second nut boat, and they check to me. And I could keep betting here because I think there's a very good chance my hand is good. If I bet and I get check raised, maybe I can fold because they maybe just like have ace king then. That kind of sucks, right? Like bet folding the second nuts. It can be fine, but let's think about what I was thinking I would get called by on the flop. Well, sure, like king or 9-9 are possible, and ace king is possible, but I'd say once they just call the flop, they're going to have a lot of like queen jack 10, they're going to have a lot of hearts, and maybe like some king 9. Those hands aren't very happy right now. So if I bet, they're just probably going to fold a lot of flush draws. So I check it back and I give them an option to bluff. Maybe they're bluffing, and yeah, I've got the second nuts. They could just be value towning with ace king. They could be betting ace 4 for value, or king or 9-9, or maybe they rivered a set of 4s with some kind of a flush draw thing. But I don't see any merit to folding this. I didn't check back so that I could fold to a pot-sized bet. And I call, and they had this hand where they flop bottom pair with like a flush draw and pocket 3s. So actually their outs were the 2 3s. That's how they could have won the hand on, you know, if that was the turn. The turn ace, they're drawing dead, right? So they're drawing dead on the turn, and I just let them either get there. If they catch a heart, maybe they check and I bet half pot and they call, or they decide to bluff for pot. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that hand, mostly because of the turn check. And then pre-flop, I kind of thought, okay, this is what I'm going for, and then they did the thing. That was what I was going for, so it worked out. Let's see. Supreme Leader Ash says, "Get that money." Thank you for dropping in and saying hi. I hope everyone always feels welcome to drop in and just say hello. The the ethical panda then says, "Ash." Our frequent podcasting cohort. We recently did a podcast on the Rise of Skywalker, which you can find at where is it? Somewhere. Star Wars Universe podcast. I'll put a link in the description below if I watch this whole video when I edit it for YouTube. But yeah, it was fun, no matter what you think of the movie. Let's see. Ash says, "I'm in the middle of our cast. Paused it to pop over and say, hey." It feels like actually hanging out with you two all day, which makes me super happy. Yeah, I like hanging out with people. That's what, you know, I was talking earlier about whether it's an optimal stream is going to be more like focused on exactly what I'm doing, and that's one kind of stream, and sometimes I want to do that. But just like hang out and like, yeah, we'll chat and I'll be playing poker. I might move more towards that sort of format. So it's nice to hear some feedback on how people like that. Panda says, I'm moving my poker chats to come after balls so you can have us all day. Yeah, so they're going to be streaming after me, probably on a particular schedule that I'll mention when it's definite. I'm still playing around with mine. Okay, so let's play the next hand. What do I have? I've got, all right, so this looks pretty good to me. Yes, it's rainbow, and yes, I get 3-bet, but no, I'm not folding. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at my button raising range. 10-10, ace jack. Well, single suited, this is just like all of the hands. Right, so ace jack with 10-10 is going to be a raise call. Basically, you want two cards that really connect to the 10-10 if you're going to call this rainbow. And if you've got like an ace in garbage, king in garbage, queen in garbage, jack in garbage, then you're going to raise fold. All right, so ace jack 10-10, rainbow is clear, RFI, I mean clear, yeah. Call from button. So pre-flop seems very straightforward. And what happened on the flop? This happened on the flop. So, I've got a gut shot. A 10 might be good. I could be ahead. Seems pretty unlikely, especially since, let's take a moment to think, what do I want them to have? I want them to have queen jack 10, maybe king queen jack 10, because then my ace is good. What else do I want them to have? Maybe like queen queen, some jack, queen queen 4-3 with two backdoor flush draws. I don't know. But my jack and my 10 are really blocking these Broadway wraps. So it's going to be very hard for them to have straight draws, which is like their main bluffing hand that they can have here. They're going to have a lot more ace king, ace ace. Yeah, I'm blocking ace king and ace ace, but also king king. And ace ace is already going to be such a big percentage of their range. Even blocking it, they're still going to have a lot of it left. So I really don't like my blockers here. I don't like my equity very much. Yes, the SPR is very low, and if it were lower, maybe we just get it in, but at SPR 2-1, I'm gonna fold this, and I just feel like they have too many good hands here, and that might be little cowardly or whatever, but that's how I play. I knit it up and I stay out of the big trouble, avoid train wreck situations. This one I think is interesting because the SPR is so low, right? And so maybe maybe because the SPR is so low, it's like, just get it in, right? You only need 40% equity there. Let's play with the equity calculator for a moment. Just a moment. We'll launch equity calculator. Let's take a look. Okay. There are jokes about the innuendo or not innuendo in the... we got to go back to where we still have cards in the chat, which is entertaining. I won't read everything. Launch equity calculator and then bring it back over here. All right, so what are we gonna run it against? Single range selector. Can I just give them like top 5%? Let's just give them top 5% for now. We'll see how this works and whether this crashes everything. Hopefully it won't, but if it does, it's been real. And same time next time, tomorrow, the next day. All right, we'll just create this range to start with, and we'll run it, and we'll see what our equity is. So against that top 5% range, we've got 54% equity. Wow, that's a lot. So then the question would be like, is that a realistic range? Let's redo this range, and instead of that, let's go to specific pair. Let's give them like king king. Let's see how we're doing against random king king, which isn't what they should have, right? Actually constructing a correct range I think is very difficult here, and I'm not super confident I'm gonna do that well. So against king king, 15%, and we wanted 40%, so that's a not so good. So let's do the multiple range selector, right? Okay, we've got king king. We're gonna include Let's include... Okay, we'll say queen, queen, or better. We'll create that, and then we'll remove that one. What else? What else can we do? Rundowns. We're going to say ace high, king high rundowns or better. 4 card straight. We'll say 4 card straight, 1 gap rundown, something like that. And we'll create that. And now, oh, I wanted to add another range. I thought this was a multi-range selector. We're gonna do this. Any pairs? No, pairs queen and higher. We're testing stuff out. We're testing things out. All right. This looks serviceable at this time. And now we'll see whether this is gonna run. Wow, and we're just dominating this range. Dominating. Because they're gonna have so much queen, queen. But like, are they gonna bet all their queen, queen? Let's do one more time. And we will remove that range. And we will add just, we want to add a range. We're going to add just kings and better. We'll just add kings. And we'll run that. So this is like basically a big rundown and top 2 sets. And just crushed, right? 20% equity. So that's like spitballing it. That's not going to be super accurate. But I find it a little sort of validating in terms of like, yeah, this is probably the thing. We're probably supposed to fold.